Heartwarming moment, Black Housekeeper steps up to defend Billionaire abandoned in court. Discover the incredible story. Clara wiped her brow as she stood outside the courthouse, the sun beating down on her like a furious spotlight. She felt the tension in the air, a mixture of hope and despair, swirling around like the dust flying up from the ground. It was the day of Mr. Hargrove's trial, a man she had served for nearly 2 decades. She loved him like family, despite the stark contrast of their lives. He, a wealthy businessman drowning in scandal; she, a humble housekeeper, standing on the fringes of a world that often overlooked her kind. As she made her way inside, she could hear the chatter of the crowd, their voices laced with judgment and speculation. Clara's heart ached for Mr. Hargrove. He had been abandoned by everyone he'd thought were friends, left alone to face serious embezzlement charges. Memories flashed in her mind. She thought of the late nights spent cleaning his sprawling mansion, listening to his stories of struggles, fears, and demons from his childhood that mirrored her own. That bond they shared had forged her loyalty, and now, she felt a fierce indignation rising within her. Just as she entered the bustling courtroom, emotions opened up like shutters. This wasn't just a trial for Mr. Hargrove. It was also about the system that had silenced people like her for too long. Clara's spirit lit up, igniting a defiance she feared had long been dormant. With every step, she felt compelled to defend him. The notion of standing up for justice hit her like a wave, filling her with purpose. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Clara's heart raced as she stepped forward, a feeling very much like her years of cleaning, polishing the dirt off not just the floors but also the nuances of humanity. She rallied those around her, a chorus of voices that included waitstaff, street vendors, and everyday folks who had likewise felt the sting of injustice. They stood beside her, and in that moment, she saw a flicker of hope igniting in their eyes, a spark that screamed for change. Just when Clara believed she might sway the jury, a former associate of Mr. Hargrove stepped forward with a shocking accusation aimed at her integrity. It sliced through her confidence like a knife. In that moment, the air felt heavy, a pulse of betrayal ringing in her ears. What was happening? She stood there, grappling with her loyalty and the deep-seated questions of merit versus privilege. Then came the moment of greatest impact. Her heartfelt testimony flowed with raw authenticity. She could see the flickers of empathy in the jury's eyes as she echoed the struggles of so many, her voice unwavering. Yet, just as hope wrapped around her like a warm embrace, a final piece of evidence was introduced, sending shockwaves through the courtroom and slamming the door on the warmth she'd started to feel. Standing amidst the chaos, Clara's heart pounded a furious beat, caught between protecting her dignity and fighting for justice. Could her strength be enough to break the chains of prejudice hanging thick in the air? As the specter of uncertainty loomed, Clara found herself timelessly at a crossroads, poised with resilience, wondering if the truth would triumph against the tide. Clara stood frozen as the courtroom erupted in whispers and gasps. The weight of the accusation hung like a cloud, dark and foreboding. She felt exposed, vulnerable under the scrutiny of those who once admired her spirit. Her mind raced, trying to gather its scattered thoughts. The eyes of the jury, once filled with understanding, now reflected doubt, questioning her motives, her loyalty. The judge called for order, but Clara's inner storm surged. She recalled years spent believing that love, honesty, and hard work would always prevail. Yet, here she was, surrounded not by allies but by a sea of skepticism. For a moment, despair gripped her heart. Was she too late to save Mr. Hargrove? Would her dedication count for nothing in the eyes of the law? Suddenly, a voice broke through the chaos. Mr. Hargrove himself. He rose, shaky yet determined, a sight that pulled Clara from her thoughts. "Your Honor, if I may," he began, words breaking free like a bird escaping its cage. Clara is not just my housekeeper, she embodies the honor and loyalty we should strive for in this world. Everything she said is true, and I stand by her. Hope sparked again inside her chest. The jury seemed to shift, faces lighting up as they processed his words. Clara felt tears pricking at her eyes. She had feared he'd lost faith in her, but hearing him speak made her realize their bond was unbreakable even in the dark. The prosecutor scoffed, shaking his head. This is a desperate plea from a desperate man. He's using her to distract from his own wrongdoings. He faced the jury, pointing at Clara as if she was the source of all the turmoil. What qualifies her to speak on his behalf? She cleans his house, for heaven's sake. Clara's heart raced again, but she pushed down the urge to shrink back. Instead, she stepped forward, raising her chin. I may clean his house, but I've also helped build his dreams, she replied, feeling each word surge with intent. I know him not just as a client, but as a man who has faced struggles, as I have. We share a lot more than this roof. We share a story. With every word, her courage unfolded. The jury listened, her vulnerability wrapping around them like a warm blanket. She spoke of the late nights and shared victories, of the moments when Mr. Hargrove had championed her ideas and fought for their worth. Clara's voice was a rhythm of resilience, and she didn't shy away from the truth of their inequities. Tears began to spill freely down her cheeks, but she didn't stop. You see, Mr. Hargrove is not just a billionaire. He's a man from the same world I came from, one where betrayal lurks just around the corner. I cannot simply sit back and let this system decide his fate based on money and privilege when I know his heart. Silence blanketed the courtroom. Clara held the jury's gaze, seeking the flicker of empathy she had witnessed moments prior. But just as she exhaled, believing she'd turned the tide, the prosecutor's assistant stepped up, brandishing a wad of papers. We have further evidence, he declared, eyes flashing with triumph. New witnesses who can undermine everything you've claimed. Clara's heart dropped, the air suddenly dense with tension again. Her stomach knotted as she realized this battle was far from over. As the courtroom began to buzz again, Clara took a deep breath, grounding herself in the fight. There was still a glimmer of hope, but would it be enough? With the weight of the moment pressing down, she knew one thing for sure: she would continue to fight, bring light in the darkest corners, and defend the man who had become more than just a job to her. Would they rally together one last time against the tide of injustice? The next round was about to unfold. Clara could feel it, the stakes were higher than ever. Clara's breath felt shallow as the room rushed to life around her. The jury shifted, concern creasing their brows, the murmurs swelling like a wave about to crash. She could almost hear her heartbeat echoing in the silence, a sonorous rhythm echoing her need for truth and justice. Mr. Hargrove, still standing, caught her eye, and for a second, she saw strength reflected in his gaze. She pressed deeper into that connection and steadied herself. Your Honor, the prosecutor barked, interrupting Clara's focus. The evidence we present will show that Clara's emotional appeal is nothing but a cloak for a web of lies. The words hit Clara like a slap. The prosecutor was coming in hot, ready to sabotage all she'd fought for so far. But this wasn't just her fight anymore, it was their fight, their combined story. Objection! Mr. Hargrove shouted, his voice breaking through the chaos. If I may, I want to see this evidence. I want the truth out in the open, and I want Clara to tell her story without this man's interference. The resolve in Hargrove's voice filled Clara with renewed vigor. He was taking command where she felt lost. The judge nodded, clearly weighing the development. Very well, he said slowly. Let us take a brief recess and return with the new witnesses. Clara felt that brief recess swallow her whole. What were these witnesses saying? Would they upend everything she had just bravely revealed? The anxiety clawed at her insides, but she couldn't afford to let fear win. Not now. As the courtroom emptied momentarily, Clara felt the weight of hundreds of eyes leave her. She leaned against the wooden railing, closing her eyes tightly, allowing a single tear to escape. She wiped it away quickly, unwilling to show any weakness. "Clara," Mr. Hargrove whispered, stepping closer. "What are you feeling?" She opened her eyes to meet his. "What if they say something that breaks this all apart? I just don't know if I can do this." "You've already stepped into the light. You've said your piece. No matter what they throw at you, they can't take away the truth we've created together. Trust that," he urged her, his eyes softening. The sincerity in his voice soothed her, wrapping her in an invisible blanket of strength. "I'll fight for you," she promised, feeling the emotion seep from her heart through to her words. It was raw, it was real. As the court swung back into session, Clara noticed the little changes in the courtroom dynamics. The jury leaned forward, curiosity replacing skepticism. Perhaps the storm had riled the truth to the surface. The prosecutor began to call the first witness. Clara's palms grew clammy as a young man stepped to the stand, his eyes scanning the room. "My name is Billy," he introduced himself, his voice wavering slightly. "I used to work with Mr. Hargrove's construction team a few years back." Clara held her breath. She remembered Billy. He was a hard-working man who struggled to make ends meet. "I had a hard time, but Mr. Hargrove, he..." Billy paused, swallowing hard. "He always believed in me. Even when I thought I didn't deserve it, he'd look me in the eye and say I was valuable. He didn't have to, but he did." A murmur of intrigue flowed through the jury. Clara's heart filled with gratitude. The powerful ripple of support was beginning to shift the air. Billy continued, speaking earnestly of how Mr. Hargrove had helped him get back on his feet. As hope blossomed, Clara realized just how interconnected everyone was in this battle. But then an unsettling thought gripped her. What if it all unraveled? Just then, she made eye contact with one of the jurors, a woman with kind eyes. Could she see the truth too? The tension in Clara's chest tightened as the prosecutor prepared to counter with more evidence. Clara felt a mix of anticipation and dread. Would they finally have their moment? And then, it hit her, the next wave of revelations was about to break. What secrets would come out, and would they be enough to secure the truth they so desperately needed? She felt the world around her fade, zeroing in on the immediate, boiling in. Uncertainty. The courtroom held its breath, and so did she. Would this battle mark the beginning of an even larger struggle for justice? Clara steeled herself, ready for the storm. The next step awaited them all, hitting harder than before. The courtroom fell into a heavy silence as the next witness, a woman with a graceful demeanor and kind eyes, rose from her seat. Clara recognized her immediately. Margaret, the elderly housekeeper who had worked for Mr. Hargrove for years. Clara's heart raced at the sight of her. Margaret had always been feisty, with a spirit that belied her years. Today, her presence felt like an anchor in the swirling storm. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" the judge asked formally. Margaret's features softened as she nodded, her hands clasped in front of her. "Go ahead, Ms. Thompson," the judge urged. Margaret took a deep breath, and the atmosphere shifted. "I'm not here for the show," she began, her voice steady and clear. "I'm here for the man who has stood by me." She glanced at Mr. Hargrove with warmth in her gaze. "He's more than a boss to me. He's family." The words drew another murmur from the jury. Clara leaned in, heart fluttering. "For over a decade, I've watched Mr. Hargrove pour his heart into the community. He gives his time, his money, and his spirit to those who need it. He treats everyone with respect, no matter their circumstances." Margaret's voice rose with passion. "He saved me when I thought no one would. When I was struggling to make ends meet after my husband passed, he didn't offer me charity. He offered me a job." Clara's eyes sparkled with unshed tears. This was the backing they needed, the reminder of Mr. Hargrove's true character. Through all the ups and downs, he made me feel valued, Margaret continued, her voice tinged with emotion. I've seen him be good when nobody's watching. That man is worth fighting for. The prosecutor's expression soured, but the jury's interest was piqued, leaning in closer. Clara felt a shift, an electric surge through the room as hope flickered like a candle flame. But then, the prosecutor stood, an expression of calculated skepticism on his face. Ms. Thompson, isn't it true that you reside in the basement apartment of Mr. Hargrove's estate? Isn't your loyalty colored by his financial support? Margaret didn't flinch. I live where I do because Mr. Hargrove offered me that help when I needed it. But my loyalty isn't for sale. It's earned. Some may see his support as a leash, but to me, it was a lifeline. Clara couldn't help but feel pride swell in her chest. Margaret was embodying the strength and dignity they were fighting for. Why do you care so much for him? Others might think it foolish, the prosecutor pressed, eyebrows raised. Because I know who he is at his core, she replied, unwavering. He has a heart bigger than anyone I know. Sometimes, it's not just about the evidence, it's about the truth that lives in our hearts. The prosecutor's face twisted, and Clara sensed he expected this line of questioning to expose weaknesses. She could see he was struggling to regain control of the narrative. The judge raised his hand, calling for silence. Thank you, Ms. Thompson. We'll hear further evidence. As Margaret waved her hand in acknowledgement, Clara felt her spirits lift further. Just when they thought the mountains before them were insurmountable, the rallying voices in the courtroom began to paint a different picture. Clara's heart raced. Was this moment a turning point? Finally, the prosecutor stood, ready to allocate his next piece of evidence. Clara held her breath, fear creeping back in. What was next? Who would step into the light, and what buried truths lay beneath the surface? Would the foundation they were building together crumble or rise against the storm? Clara's heart echoed in her ears, anticipation and dread mixing in a volatile blend. The world around her felt charged with possibility, a precarious moment teetering on the brink. She felt compelled to keep fighting for the truth, for justice, but the shadows loomed. What if the next witness unraveled everything they were fighting to protect? As the prosecutor gathered his thoughts, Clara felt the tension rise in the air. The realization hit her that with every witness called, the stakes grew higher. She could see the weight of her responsibility etched on Mr. Hargrove's face. Your next witness, Mr. Caldwell? The judge prompted, breaking the silence. The prosecutor adjusted his tie, a smirk creeping onto his lips. Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to call Mr. Roberts to the stand. Clara's stomach twisted. She recognized the name immediately. William Roberts, a former associate of Mr. Hargrove. He had been a longtime friend until a business deal gone wrong had soured their relationship. She could only imagine what he would say, and for a moment, doubt crept into her mind. When Roberts entered, Clara watched him carefully, his confident stride betraying none of the turmoil that had once existed between them. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Mr. Roberts, the prosecutor began smoothly, please share with the court your relationship with Mr. Hargrove. Certainly, Roberts replied, his voice dripping with a practiced tone. I worked with him closely for years. We built businesses together. And when did that relationship take a turn? The prosecutor pressed. I would say a couple of years back, Roberts said, feigning casual indifference. After I confronted him about certain dishonorable decisions. Clara could feel her heart pound louder with every word. She looked to Mr. Hargrove, who remained stoic, but a flicker of vulnerability crossed his eyes. Dishonorable? Can you elaborate? The prosecutor probed, a glint of excitement in his gaze. Let us just say he chose profit over ethics, Roberts said, tilting his head as if relishing the moment. I saw him put money before people, and I couldn't stand by. Clara gripped her pen tightly, her knuckles whitening. The words felt like arrows, each one capable of piercing through the armor they had worked so hard to build. She wanted to shout, to defend him, but she had to trust that Mr. Hargrove would find a way to respond. "Do you have any proof of these claims?" the judge interjected, raising an eyebrow. The courtroom went silent as Roberts hesitated. "I don't have documents," he admitted, surprise flickering across his face. "It's more about what I witnessed." Clara sensed a shift. Maybe without proof, his claims would fall flat. "Witnesses?" the prosecutor pressed, sensing his opportunity. "You're implying, then, that your word alone is sufficient?" "Because I'm confident we'll hear otherwise." "I don't need witnesses," Robert said, his voice quivering in frustration. "I know what I saw." The audience buzzed with whispered opinions, and Clara felt the room closing in on her. "Mr. Roberts," the judge spoke again. "Can you state that under oath? Can you affirm that you witnessed wrongdoing?" "Yes," he spat, a tinge of desperation creeping into his voice. "I can." But then, suddenly, the doors of the courtroom swung open. Clara turned quickly, shocked as a striking figure entered. It was Olivia, Mr. Hargrove's niece, who had been out of town during this turmoil. Clara could see in Olivia's eyes a fierce determination that mirrored her uncle's. "I need to testify," Olivia called, striding forward. Gasps swept through the courtroom. Clara's heart raced. What secrets would Olivia reveal? Could she turn the tide, or would her presence only complicate matters further? Clara felt the world spin. Olivia had the potential to shake the very foundation of this case. But would it be for better or worse? The uncertainty settled on Clara's shoulders heavily, and she held her breath, the weight of every moment crashing down around her. What had Olivia come to reveal? Would it fortify their fight or unravel everything they stood for? Olivia stood there, a burst of energy in the heavy, charged atmosphere of the courtroom. She looked determined, and Clara felt a mix of hope and dread. They had counted on unexpected support, but this was a twist they had never anticipated. The judge straightened in his seat, a frown settling on his features. "Miss Hargrove, please approach the stand," he instructed, his tone leaving no room for argument. Clara's heart raced as Olivia moved forward, her confident steps echoing in the silence. The tension was palpable, and Clara could feel 1,000 eyes watching closely, waiting, judging. This was a moment of reckoning. As Olivia took the oath, Clara saw her exhale deeply, gathering her thoughts like a soldier preparing for battle. There was something powerful about her presence, and Clara hoped it would be enough to turn the tide. "Miss Hargrove," the prosecutor began, his voice slightly wary. "What do you wish to testify about today?" "I'm here to clarify the truth about my uncle," Olivia declared boldly. "He is not the monster Mr. Roberts claims he is." Gasps filled the room. Clara felt a rush of relief wash over her. Perhaps Olivia could diffuse the fire that Roberts had ignited. The prosecutor's eyes narrowed. "And what truth is that?" he asked, pressing. "The truth that my uncle has always cared deeply about the people he works with. He isn't some heartless businessman." Olivia's voice rang clear and true, and Clara felt tears prick at her eyes. "Caring?" Robert sneered, unable to contain himself. "You think caring matters when people lose their livelihoods because of his greed? He made mistakes like anyone else." Olivia shot back, her voice unwavering. "But he never intended to harm anyone. He was driven by the pressures of the business world and the dreams he wanted to bring to life." Clara shifted in her seat. She had often heard Mr. Hargrove express his dreams for his businesses, how he wanted them to uplift the community. It was hard to reconcile those visions with the accusations being thrown around right now. "Miss Hargrove," the prosecutor pressed, taking advantage of Olivia's fervor, "do you have any evidence to back your claims?" Olivia hesitated, visibly taken aback. Clara could see the moment of doubt flicker in her eyes. The courtroom felt like a tightly wound spring, ready to snap. Olivia began, but then her expression hardened. "I don't have documents, but I have truth. The truth is that my uncle has always strived to do better. He's made mistakes and he's not perfect, but neither is any of us." The voices around the courtroom murmured. Clara felt a heaviness in her chest, as if she were standing on the edge of a precipice. What would happen if Olivia's truth wasn't enough? Suddenly, Mr. Hargrove leaned forward, his voice low but strong. "Olivia, don't put yourself at risk. It's my fight, not yours." His words struck Clara deeply, a reminder of the sacrifices he had made. But Olivia wouldn't back down. "No. This is our fight, Uncle," she cried. "People need to know who you truly are." As bravado and vulnerability clashed in the courtroom, Clara felt a surge of hope swell within her. There was strength in the bonds of their family, but then, as Olivia prepared to delve deeper into her testimony, the door creaked open again. A figure stepped into the courtroom, and Clara gasped, recognizing it instantly. It was Mr. Thorne, Mr. Hargrove's old friend turned rival. He looked furious. The air thickened once more, and Clara wondered what new chaos this intrusion might bring. Could this derail everything Olivia had just built with her testimony, or would it somehow shift the momentum back in their favor? Clara's heart raced as she prepared for the next wave, unsure of what truth would emerge from the growing storm. Would they ever escape these spiraling tensions, or was this only the beginning of a much larger confrontation? The courtroom shifted into a different kind of turmoil as Mr. Thorne's presence loomed larger. His sharp suit seemed to absorb the surrounding tension like a black hole, drawing every eye and whispering suspicion from the crowd. Clara noticed Olivia's face flicker. Was that fear or surprise? It was hard to tell, but one thing was clear: this was an unexpected twist in an already turbulent day. "Your Honor," Thorne began, his voice smooth and authoritative, "I believe I have important information that sheds light on this case, a perspective that hasn't been fully considered." His smugness was palpable, as if he reveled in the chaos he was about to unleash. The judge raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "Proceed, Mr. Thorne." Without waiting for an invitation, he strode closer to the stand. "Miss Hargrove, what makes you think you can defend your uncle so firmly?" His tone was almost mocking. "He's a businessman in a ruthless world. Isn't it naive to think that kindness alone can keep a company afloat?" Olivia squared her shoulders, refusing to yield. "It's not about only kindness, Mr. Thorne. It's about integrity, vision, and the people who depend on him. That's what makes a successful leader." Thorne chuckled, shaking his head, a predatory glint in his eye. "And how does integrity protect people when the bottom line fails? I believe the record will show that your uncle's actions created a ripple effect of hardship. His dream has come at a cost." "Your Honor," Olivia interjected, her voice rising. "Mr. Thorne is here to distort the truth. He's using my uncle's challenges for his own gain. The evidence showed my uncle's commitment to the community." Clara could see tension tightening Olivia's jaw, a storm brewing behind her fierce stance. She knew the pressure was mounting, and every word mattered now more than ever. But was Olivia's truth enough to withstand Thorne's calculated assault? "Community, yes," Thorne said smoothly, his eyes narrowing as he pivoted to the audience. "But look where that community stands now. They were promised growth and prosperity, yet many lost their jobs. This isn't about personal beliefs, this is cold, hard facts. You cannot put a happy face on failure." A murmur rippled through the courtroom like a wave crashing against the shore, and Clara could see the uncertainty creeping into the eyes of some spectators. Would they be swayed by Thorne's rhetoric? The doubt felt like quicksand, urging Clara to take action. "Your Honor," Clara found her voice, surprising herself with the sudden boldness. "Mr. Thorne may present numbers, but he can't quantify the heart and soul behind those dreams. Mr. Hargrove has rescued many lives, giving people opportunities they would never have had otherwise." The room fell silent, a collective breath escaped as eyes darted toward her. She could feel their gazes, some filled with curiosity while others showed irritation. But Clara pressed on. We must not forget the human cost behind every decision. People are more than just figures on a balance sheet. They're families, hopes, and dreams. As her words echoed in the courtroom, she caught Olivia's gaze, an unspoken connection that sparked a tiny flame of determination. This wasn't just about Mr. Hargrove, it was about every single life affected by their decisions. Thorne's expression darkened. So you're willing to ignore the reality that your uncle's decisions have left many in despair? How noble, he snipped, his voice a velvet rasp. Clara's heart felt like it was racing against the clock, a desperate beat against the echoing notes of this chaotic symphony. Whatever spark Olivia had ignited needed to be fanned into a flame, and fast. She debated the next words, understanding how high the stakes were. But what happens when those families have to choose between loyalty and survival? When the truth is buried beneath ambition? Clara finished, her voice a trembling whisper that hung heavy in the air. In that moment, the judge's gavel slammed down, breaking the spell of silence. Order in the court. But the rush of emotions in the courtroom was palpable. Clara's heart was already racing, not just at what might come next in the hearing, but at the realization of how heavy their fight had become. What if their stand for justice became a rallying cry, or worse, a battle that left them all bruised? She glanced at Olivia, fear mingling with hope, wondering what revelations would fracture the walls they were building together. As the tension thickened, Clara felt one thing clear: whatever happened next, their fates were entwined. Would they rise together, or would the weight of their truths drag them down? Clara's heart pounded in her chest as she gazed at Olivia, silently pleading for her to stay strong. The courtroom buzzed with nervous energy, the tension crackling like static in the air. Thorne's smirk was infuriating, like a wolf watching a lamb, and Clara desperately wished she had chosen a different way to express her thoughts. "Miss Hargrove," the judge interjected, his voice cutting through the murmur, "I believe we need to hear from your uncle. I trust he can provide insight into these allegations." With a slight nod from Olivia, Mr. Hargrove was summoned to the stand. He looked weary, the weight of the world resting on his aging shoulders. Clara couldn't tell if it was from their family troubles or the impending judgment, but she felt a wave of compassion for him. After all, he had dedicated his life to building something meaningful. As he took the stand, his hands trembled slightly. Clara noticed Olivia's grip tightening on the edge of the table, her knuckles white. "This isn't just about them, uncle. It's about our family," Clara whispered, hoping he could hear through the commotion. "Mr. Hargrove," the judge began, "can you explain what led to the decisions that have brought us here today?" Hargrove cleared his throat, his voice shaky but determined. "Your Honor, I made choices, difficult choices. I thought I was providing opportunities, that my actions would bear fruit for the community. I wanted to help, and to create lasting change." Thorne seized the opportunity, leaning forward with predatory interest. "Opportunities that clearly went awry. Would you say you were blinded by ambition, Mr. Hargrove?" "Ambition isn't a crime," Hargrove replied, voicing the long-held convictions that had driven him his entire career. "But I admit I didn't consider how fragile the lives around me truly were. I thought I could do it all." The judge's expression softened slightly at the hesitation in Hargrove's words. Clara could feel the audience leaning in, their breath held. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of Olivia's face, a whirlwind of emotions battling within her. Among that storm, Clara could sense a flicker of hope. "Let us talk about this community," Clara exclaimed, breaking in once again. "What about the people who believed in him? The families who have flourished under his leadership?" She turned to the crowd, searching their expressions. They supported him through thick and thin. "If you take Mr. Hargrove down, you're taking down all the people who counted on him." Thorne raised his eyebrows, the smirk faltering momentarily. "Such loyalty is commendable, but it can't negate the impact of decisions made. Those dreams can't substitute for reality. But what's the reality? Clara asked, her voice rising with intensity. Is it just about numbers to you? To me, the reality is laughter in homes, kids raised with dreams, and businesses started from the ground up. You can't put a price on people's spirits. Clara heard whispers spread among the audience like wildfire, sparking a wave of support that felt electric. She clenched her fists, summoning every ounce of courage she had. Mr. Hargrove deserves a chance to correct his course. If we turn our backs now, what message does that send to our community? Silence descended, only to be shattered by the sound of soft sniffling. Clara realized it was the black housekeeper who had cared for her uncle for years, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks as she stood up slowly. Attention shifted toward her, the story of her life intertwining with Hargrove's. Mr. Hargrove gave me a job, allowed me to provide for my 2 sons. She cried, her voice cracking. He turned my life around. He saw me, and my worth, when others wouldn't. I would remind people there's goodness in him. A ripple of murmurs swept through the crowd, heart-stirring, and Clara felt adrenaline pumping through her veins. A glimmer of hope danced in her chest, but could it be enough? Everyone deserves redemption, Clara asserted, locking eyes with Olivia, who wore an expression of fierce vulnerability. Would they be strong enough to face Thorne together, or would his relentless pursuit bury their voices? As the judge leaned back thoughtfully, the air felt thick with possibility. Would their united stand transform the narrative? Or would the shadows of doubt cast over them bring their fight crashing down? The answer lingered just beyond reach, like the calm before a brewing storm. The air in the courtroom was charged, like a thick fabric woven from nervous breaths and unspoken fears. Clara's heart raced as she watched the housekeeper, Ms. Adams, who had stood strong for a life she had earned. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, and the audience watched in rapt attention. If ever there was a moment for transformation, this was it. Thank you, Ms. Adams, the judge said, his gaze shifting back to Hargrove. Let's hear what Mr. Hargrove has to say about Ms. Adams' statement. Hargrove took a deep breath, the weight of conviction settling in his chest. I didn't realize how much my decisions affected individuals like Ms. Adams. I've focused so much on numbers, on climbing higher, I lost sight of the people. I never intended to cause harm. A murmur rippled through the gallery, with expressions of empathy and resonance moving like waves. Clara leaned in, hoping the momentum would sustain itself. We're not just talking about a business here, she chimed in, her voice steady with emotion. We're discussing lives, families, and the connections we share. Thorne's expression hardened. He leaned back in his chair with a calculated arrogance, readying himself for his next strike. You think this sentimentality changes the facts, Clara? The legal implications are far more permanent than heartwarming speeches. The crowd's energy dipped momentarily, sensing the bleak potential of Thorne's words. Clara squared her shoulders, fighting against the tide of despair. It's never about just facts. It's about what we choose to uphold as a community. I know my uncle has made mistakes, but he has also built a foundation for many to thrive. That counts for something. A few nods emerged in the crowd, flickers of unity igniting like kindling. Clara could feel it another chance to shift the battle. Mr. Hargrove, the judge continued, looking earnestly at her uncle, what your niece said about building community, do you believe that you can rectify the errors you've made? Hargrove's face softened, revealing genuine remorse. I want to. I see the pain, the uncertainty I've caused, and I want to make it right. It's hard to admit when you've been blinded by ambition, but that's the truth. His voice cracked, revealing vulnerability that hung heavy in the air. Then let us talk about rebuilding, Clara urged, galvanizing her voice with passion. Let us talk about fresh starts, about opportunities to do better. The community deserves more than judgment, it deserves a path forward. Just then, the courtroom doors swung wide open. A figure stepped in, disrupting the air like a strike of lightning. The sudden intrusion pulled everyone's gaze, causing a hush to fall over the room. Clara squinted, trying to discern the newcomer, her heart racing again for an entirely different reason. "Excuse me," came a familiar voice, laced with authority and urgency. It was Clara's father, his face set in determination, baby steps echoing loudly against the polished floor. "Dad?" Clara whispered, confusion etched on her brow. What was he doing here? "Clara." "Olivia," he called as he approached the front. "I've been watching, and there's something you all need to know." The courtroom shifted, tension palpable and charged with uncertainty. Could this be the revelation they had been swept into the depths of despair waiting for? Could this hold the key to a twist they desperately needed? Every eye turned to Clara, expectation filling the air thick as molasses. Would her father's words change everything? Or would they be yet another layer of complication thrown into their already stormy battle? "Your Honor," Clara's father continued, his voice stern yet pleading, "I have critical information about Mr. Hargrove that influences everything you've heard today." Clara's heart surged with confusion and hope. What could he possibly have to say? Could this be the lifeline they so desperately needed? She thought of all the struggles they had faced together, and suddenly each moment felt coincidental, a web they hadn't realized was forming until now. "Please, proceed," the judge instructed, stroking his chin, clearly interested in what this sudden turn would reveal. Taking a deep breath, Clara's father looked around, locking eyes with her and then shifting to Olivia. "I'm not here to besmirch Mr. Hargrove's character. In fact, I've seen his generosity firsthand. But what has come to light in this courtroom isn't the whole truth." The tension tightened further as Mr. Hargrove's eyes widened, anxiety flaring across his features. "I have evidence," her father continued, showcasing a folder, "that proves Mr. Roberts' claims are not based on fact but motivated by his own greed." He placed the folder on the judge's desk with a firm hand, the noise echoing against the silence, magnifying the moment. "What do you mean?" The prosecutor interjected, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. "Mr. Roberts was involved in shady dealings that ultimately failed, leading to his vendetta against Mr. Hargrove. I've gathered testimonies from various individuals in the industry, corroborated with hard evidence of their collusions." Clara's heart raced at the thought of vindication. "You'll see that the pattern indicates manipulation, and not the impropriety that he's portraying." The courtroom buzzed with whispers, the crowd coming alive with speculation and disbelief. Mr. Thorne's smug facade cracked slightly, frustration flaring in his eyes. Clara's father had turned the tide. "Your Honor, we request these documents be reviewed as vital evidence for the defense," he concluded, his voice steady. "Very well," the judge replied, motioning for a brief recess. Clara stood frozen alongside Olivia, their gazes locked in shared disbelief and hope. This was a miracle they hadn't seen coming. As the crowd slowly dispersed, Clara felt a rush of emotions, disbelief, relief, and a burgeoning sense of triumph. She glanced at Mr. Hargrove, who appeared burdened, but a newfound glint of hope danced in his eyes. The brief recess gave Clara time to regroup, and she spotted Olivia's determination shining through the uncertainty. "This is it, Clara," Olivia whispered. "We have to stay strong. Do you think it'll be enough?" Clara asked, anxiety creeping back in as thoughts of how close they'd come to losing everything swept over her again. "It must be," Olivia replied firmly. "We can't give up now." When the recess ended, the courtroom reconvened, a renewed sense of purpose hung in the air. The documents were presented, sparking discussion among the jury. Mr. Hargrove's eyes flitted between Clara and his niece, a quiet acknowledgement that the battle was shifting in their favor, at least for the moment. With the new evidence spread before them, the prosecutor's aggressive demeanor faltered. "This changes nothing," he shouted, frustration spilling over. "Actually," the judge replied calmly, "it changes everything. This evidence not only casts doubt but shifts the entire foundation of the prosecution's case. Clara held her breath as the jurors began whispering amongst themselves again, their brows furrowing with new information processing. Their discussions, indecipherable from where she sat, felt like an eternity, and then, the jury foreman stood, voice steady and strong. "We, the jury, have reached a verdict." The weight of the moment pressed against Clara's chest as a hush fell over the courtroom. Gazing at Mr. Hargrove, she could see his tension, fear mingled with trepidation coursed through her too. "On the count of embezzlement, we find the defendant Mr. Hargrove not guilty." The silence shattered. Cheers broke out among supporters, and the weight lifting in the room felt almost tangible. Clara squeezed Olivia's hand, tears spilling down her cheeks as joy mingled with disbelief. Mr. Hargrove rose, eyes shimmering with emotion. Clara saw him embrace the woman who had stood beside them, honoring the bond forged over years of loyalty and love. "Thank you," he murmured to his team, his voice thick with gratitude. "Thank you," Clara echoed, moving forward and enveloping him in a powerful embrace. "We did it." In that charged moment, the pain and struggle felt justified, the battle had been won. As they stepped out of the courthouse, the sun shone brighter than before, illuminating the path ahead. They had faced the untamable currents of doubt and emerged stronger, transforming not just their journey but also the community around them. Clara turned to Mr. Hargrove and Olivia. "What now?" "Now," Hargrove declared, strength lining his words, "we rebuild. Together." As they stood united under the vast blue sky, Clara felt a renewed sense of hope blooming in her heart. No longer just the housekeeper or an outsider looking in, she was part of something greater, now part of a family forged from adversity, connection, and unwavering love. The fight for justice had been their beginning, but now the journey of healing and growth was just getting started. Together, they would make their mark on the world, and as Clara looked around at the faces of her newfound family, she smiled, knowing that they would rise and thrive from here on. Now it was time to move forward better, brighter, together. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and feelings about this ending below. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Your support matters. Let's grow this community together.